Good morning, class. We are continuing looking at these invertebrates, the arthropods, and more specifically, the crustaceans. Crustaceans are the most common aquatic arthropod, and many of you probably have maybe consumed a crustacean. If you've ever had shrimp or you've ever had lobster, those are crustaceans. We'll take a look at the special features of crustaceans, what makes them crustaceans, and why we group them as such. So first up, list the characteristics of decapods. So decapods is one of the categories of crustaceans. And then contrast the habitats of barnacles, copepods, and isopods. So again, these are some of the other types of decapods and arthropods that we'll take a look at. All of these guys fall under that crustaceans category. So the world of crustaceans. Crustaceans are small organisms. They have a hard exoskeleton, and you can see here is a picture of this little crustacean. And I've got a video clip here. I'll link this up as well for you on the homework. But this is krill, and this kind of reddishness here is all of these little tiny krill, these little crustaceans. And amazingly, these giant blue whales, which is the largest vertebrate animal, big blue whales, like to eat these little crustaceans. And so they'll consume millions and millions, tons and tons of these guys to stay alive. Well, the crustaceans kind of fall into a couple different pods. The decapods are barnacle, and then copepods, and I actually forgot to put on here isopods as well. So isopods fall into this category as well. The pods word has to deal with legs or feet. So we'll see that they all have 10 or so legs. And the decapods means 10 legs. Deca is 10, pods is legs. Examples would be things like lobsters, crabs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Shrimp, crayfish. These are freshwater decapods. And they, for the most part, all have 4 pairs of legs. So these would be their legs. We call these periopods. And then they have 2 pinchers in the front, chelepods, that they use to grab things, hang onto their food, fight, defend each other. So they've got a holder claw, a crusher claw, and then usually a cutter claw. Pretty cool little organisms. As you can see, they've got this outer shell around them as well, with these body segments that allow them to have some mobility. Since they do have exoskeletons like all the other arthropods, they have to molt to get out of their exoskeleton so they can grow. As you can see on the inside here, they do have different glands. They have stomachs, intestines. These antennae, which are on the outside, allow them to sense both the movement of water and predators and prey. Intestines here, they do have nerve cords, different abdominal segments. Reproductive features are inside as well. Decapods typically have 2 body parts, the cephalothorax and the abdomen. So similar to the arachnids, they have this head-thorax part, and they have this abdominal part. They have these sensory organs up in the front, antenna, and then again, the pinchers you can see there. So cephalothorax and abdomen. Abdomen still has the reproductive organs as well as some of the digestive organs. Hard exoskeleton. If you've ever had to eat crab or lobster, you had to break through their exoskeleton to get to the tasty goodness inside. That exoskeleton has a material called carapace. Also, we've got our sensory organs, like I said, the antenna, and then mandibles. Mandibles are kind of their feeding parts right here. On to the barnacles. Barnacles are a little bit different. They are a marine crustacean which forms a calcium carbonate shell. So you can see they still have these legs, but they have kind of a different feature. So they'll grow this shell around themselves and kind of cement themselves onto a substance. And then they basically have their feet sticking out, and they'll kind of gather material here and eat it. Here's their mouth and stomach. They've got this muscle that kind of holds them in place, is able to open and close this little trap door here. And so the simple barnacles, they don't do a whole lot during low tide. Low tide time, they, with the tides, they just kind of burrow in and hide. But then at high tide, then they become more active. Oh, my video is not going to work. But at high tide, they'll kind of pop out of their shell a little and allow food and things to be passed inside. Here you can see a picture of one of these barnacles. They do eat invertebrates, so they'll kind of sweep and gather in different little invertebrates. Typically, they're sessile as adults. You can see an adult one here. It's kind of latched onto and grown onto its whatever it's living on. And as youth or as young, they're mobile. So you can see the little larval here can swim around, land on a spot, and then begin to stay and kind of cement itself to that spot. The adult is then going to lay eggs. They're going to hatch in a larvae, and the larvae will swim, and that life cycle continues. The next group are the copepods. Copepods are extremely small. They're under 2 millimeters in length. They're very, very small. They feed on phytoplankton. Remember, phytoplankton are the plankton that use sunlight. They do photosynthesis, so phytoplankton. These guys really are the base of the food chain. They're extremely small, and you can find them living in both fresh and in marine water. So copepods is another one of these crustaceans. And then lastly, we have our isopods. Isopods are very small marine crustaceans. Example would be things like the sea slaters. There are a few terrestrial examples, like the standard pill bug or roly-poly. Their real name is a wood lice. But these guys here are considered isopods, but they do live on land. They usually live in moist areas, like possibly underneath rotting logs, things like that. And for defense, they roll up. Hence the name roly-poly, and that's probably what you learned them as when you were finding them when you're out exploring nature as a little kid. So isopods is that last category. So we have our decapods, copepods, isopods, and barnacles. Those are the 4 groups of crustaceans. Number 1 lists at least 3 features of a decapod. So you can go back to the decapod section if you need to. Again, that's a lobster, crayfish, those kinds of things. Number 2, describe the habitat and feeding mechanism of a barnacle. They're a little bit different in their styling as far as their method of getting food. The decapods and isopods and copepods swim around and they gather and capture food. The barnacles do it a little bit different way. Number 3, explain the importance of copepods to the fishing industry. If you ever watch any of those fishing shows, either on Netflix or on Amazon Prime, you'll see that they play a huge role in the economy of port towns and harbors throughout the world. So that is it for 24.3 crustaceans, most common aquatic arthropods.